How's everyone feeling? Yeah, it's been a great day. First, I want to say I'm just so happy and thankful to be here. I met Ilya and some other good friends from Kyrgyzstan in 2020 when they had the chance to visit Cleveland, Ohio. And I was supposed to come to Kyrgyzstan in March of 2020, but we all know that travel stopped and I wasn't able to make it. And I didn't know if I'd have another opportunity to come to Kyrgyzstan. So I'm really thankful that I'm able to make it. Also, I want to thank everyone for your hospitality, sharing your food, your culture, and this beautiful country. One second. Nope. Up. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so what are we here to talk about? So we've had a great day, an amazing conference. We've met lots of new people. We've played new games. We've heard some great talks and learned some great information. So how do we take this great energy and move it forward? We're going to talk about networking. So what are some things that we do networking for? So the first one is career advancement. You want to network with different people. You want to make connections because we're all looking to get jobs. Most of us are looking to get jobs in the game industry. We're looking to have careers. And by meeting people is how we make those connections, how we form those relationships that might not turn into jobs right now, but they might turn into jobs later. They might turn into business partners. They might turn into collaborators. And so networking is the tool that we use to make those relationships. Networking also increases our opportunities, whether that be opportunities for funding, opportunities for collaboration, opportunities that we didn't even consider. And then lastly, networking we can use for growth and knowledge and support. So when you're networking, you're oftentimes connecting with individuals that you share something with. And so because you share something with those individuals, you can learn from them. They might have encountered a problem before you, so they can mentor you. You can mentor them. Mentoring someone is one of the best ways to learn something. And so there's a lot of great reasons for networking. But networking is hard. I'm an extrovert. I like to, talk with people. I like to interact with people. That's what gives me energy. That's, what gets me going. I know a lot of us in the game industry are introverts, and so networking is hard. But even for me as an extrovert, networking can be difficult. And so this is one of the reasons why I want to give this talk, to talk about some of the things that you can do to help make networking a little bit easier, some different ways of thinking about networking, and provide some ideas to help you in your careers. So first, a little bit about myself. So I'm Jarryd. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I am a game programmer. I currently work for a VR studio called Alchemy Labs. I'm a lead optimization engineer there. A couple years ago, actually 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to co-author a book called Game Programming for Artists. It's a book that teaches artists or any type of non-programmer how to program games. So it breaks things down. It uses real-world examples, like comparing things to like knitting or maybe hopscotch or different games to make them a little bit more digestible. And so it's been used in a couple of different universities and in some game studios to help artists collaborate, understand how to talk with programmers, and understand a little bit more about how programming works. I help organize our local game development group in Cleveland called the Cleveland Game Developers. We have about maybe 200 to 300 active members that we'll see throughout the course of a year. Our monthly meetups are maybe about 30 people, but that's where I got my start, by connecting with people there, by meeting people and having mentors. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm extremely passionate about paying it forward, about taking the opportunities other people gave to me and extending those to others. This map right there is a map of the United States, and if you see that little red dot, that's where Cleveland is. It's on one of the Great Lakes. And then over here on the left-hand side is my original game that I released a couple years ago called Art Club Challenge. It was a mobile game that taught people how to make art through solving puzzles. So you'd be given a challenge, make a blue bird, make a ocean sunset, and just with boxes and squares in red, yellow, and blue and black, you would need to figure out how to make a piece of art to solve that puzzle. Once you made the piece of art, you'd be able to upload it to an online gallery and share it with the world and see how other people accomplish that same goal. Unfortunately, it got caught up in one of Apple's game purges. I'm hoping to get it back up on the App Store, so stay tuned. But something kind of funny, I based my game on the art of P8 Mondrian, and when we had the tour of Alala yesterday, there's a P8 Mondrian reproduction painting there, so I snapped a quick selfie yesterday, which was pretty cool. And a few other things that I've done. My game Art Club Challenge was featured at the Smithsonian Museum in a showcase in America. The Smithsonian is the biggest art museum in the US, and so that was a really cool show to be a part of. And then I also taught at a local university for about 7 years. I taught game programming there. So some of my professional work with games, I founded a small startup studio called Polytundra. We are kind of on pause right now, but focused on porting games to consoles. And so we had the opportunity to port a couple of games to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. And then I was previously lead programmer on a game called We Are OFK. It was a game based on a virtual band. We released the songs on Spotify, and then we released the game episodically every week, and so people could play the game and then download the songs on like Spotify and Apple Music. But like I said, now I'm at Alchemy Labs. So, jumping back to networking. So what is networking? Before we jump into it, I actually gave a talk on networking a couple of years ago at GDC. That talk was more about in-person networking. It was about how do you, if you're at an event, how do you approach a group of people and join the conversation? How do you make someone feel welcome to join a conversation that you're having so people feel, comfortable approaching you and joining? How to conduct yourself in a networking event and how to make connections. So I'd recommend going and finding it on YouTube. If you just search that long title, Networking Etiquette for the Modern Games Industry Professional, you'll find that on YouTube, or if you just search the GDC channel, you'll be able to find that as well. But I'm going to borrow like 2 slides from that, which is the definition of networking. So there's 2 definitions if we look on the dictionary online. One is the exchange of information or services amongst individuals, groups, or institutions. And then the second is the establishment or use of a computer network. So we're not really interested about the second one because I'm not a computer. I don't know about you. But the exchange of information or services amongst individuals, groups, or institutions. So the first thing I want to highlight here is the individuals. Whenever you're networking, I want you always to keep in mind the individuals. It's okay to network with a purpose. It's okay to network with a goal. Maybe you're at an event and there's a game studio you want to talk to, and you're like, oh, I'd love to really talk to a hiring manager at that studio, or I'd love to get my portfolio in front of, somebody from Blizzard. That's okay, but as you're doing that, make sure you keep the individual in mind, because if you're just focused on a goal, you might accidentally, come off as a little bit rude. You might come off as a little bit just too focused on the goal and not focused on the person. So you want to make sure whenever you're networking, especially when you have a goal, that you're thinking about the people and the people you're interacting with and the human connections that you're making, because that's essentially at the root of all networking. It's just human connections. And so you want to make sure you're respectful, you're thinking of the people, and you're keeping that in mind. One moment. All right, so that's the formal definition of networking, and now we'll jump into my definition of networking. There's a couple of things that I've identified over the years that I think play into good networking and good networking opportunities. So a good networking opportunity might have one of these, might have two, might have all of them. There's two slides, but the first is a shared place. So a shared place could be a physical place, it could be a virtual place, it could be the place you are in your career, but it's something that you have in common with other people. Right now, we're all sharing the same physical space, and so we can walk up to each other, we can interact, we can network. It might be a virtual space. After COVID, there was a lot of virtual conferences that happened, and a lot of opportunities for virtual networking where they would give you spaces, but it could also be things like an email chain or a forum. Those are all virtual places, but they're still places that you can find other people to interact with. The next is shared interest. This could be a field of study, a career path, specialization, it could be side hobbies, but these are just information that you share with someone else. And so when you connect with that person, because you have a shared interest, you have a bank of information that you can use to connect with that person. You have shared knowledge between you that you can use to kind of kickstart that friendship, that relationship, that conversation. And then shared people. So, you know, you might be in a shared space, you might have shared interests, but, you know, if you're in an event that has hundreds of people, you might not get a chance to talk with everyone. And so even though you're in a shared space and have shared interests, you might miss that connection. But if you have a shared person who knows, oh, you know, my friend is interested in shader programming, you're interested in shader programming, let me introduce you. That's another great way of networking and kind of another part of the recipe for good networking. All right, the next one, and this is probably like my most important, the thing that I always try to keep in mind when networking and interacting with people is to give, is to be genuine. So as a good rule of thumb, always try to offer as much support as you can when you're networking. So when you're networking with someone and, you know, maybe you're chatting with someone, you find out they're working for a studio you respect, don't just start asking for, oh, you know, could you get my resume in front of could you, you know, send an email for me to this person. You know, if you start a conversation, you know, you're getting to chat with someone and you ask them, hey, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there any way that I can support you? If not, you know, here's my email, just let me know. That's a really different way of approaching a conversation, and it sets up a good start of that relationship. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the individuals, to make sure that you're keeping the individuals in mind. And, you know, even from my experience, I have a number of friends that, you know, that's kind of how our relationship started at different conferences, and we've been able to help each other out and support each other throughout the years. The next one is kind of tricky, but we'll talk through it, is to find your thing in networking. So a lot of us in the game industry is a faceted, multi-disciplinary industry. A lot of us have a lot of different skills in a lot of different fields. So I've worked at places where one of the producers has been the lead musician, or the 3D modeler was also HR. Especially at the indie level, a lot of us wear a lot of hats. But whenever you're networking, it's usually good to figure out what you want to lead with. Because if you meet someone, you're like, I'm a 3D modeler, I'm a musician, I'm a 2D texture artist, and I do background vocals. That's a lot for someone to take in at once. And if they're trying to keep you in mind, if it's a good conversation and they want to recommend you, they're going to be like, well, which one do they want me to recommend? So it's usually good to just pick one focus to lead with. And those other ones are kind of like an added bonus. So for me, I'm a programmer, I'm an engineer. And whenever I started my studio, Polytundra, I didn't actually have experience porting games. I had experience programming, but whenever I met someone, I said, hey, I have a small studio, Polytundra. We're focusing on porting games to consoles, and that's just kind of what I led with. If the conversation continued, I could say, oh, I play some instruments. I do music as kind of a hobby. I also, can do 3D modeling if I really need to, but not really well. But figuring out what you want to lead with helps make that stronger impression, helps make that memory a little bit more concrete for whoever you're interacting with. And then lastly is consistency. So consistency can play into that last point we said. where as you're introducing yourself, you're using that same career point that you want to lead with, that same strength of yours you want to lead with. But also, we're going to talk about networking opportunities you can create for yourself by running events. Whenever you're running events, the number one most important thing is to be consistent. If you're running, a meetup group and 1 month you have 3 meetups, and then it goes 4 or 5 months and you don't have meetups, and then you have 2, the next month, people aren't going to know what to expect. People aren't going to know when to come. They're going to be like, oh, is this a month where there's going to be a lot or a month where there's going to be none? And so in my experience, from working with the local game development group in Cleveland, we always have a meeting on the 3rd Tuesday at a coffee shop, and then we have a meeting on the 1st Saturday at a co-working space. Always, always, for the last actually the group turns 20 this year, now that I think about it. It's actually a really old game development group. I didn't found it. I've been an organizer, I think, for about 7 or 8 years. But it got so consistent to the point where people wouldn't even look at the emails. They would just say, oh, it's the 3rd Tuesday, the GameDev group is at the coffee shop. And that's how you really create those opportunities for people to interact and for people to have a chance to make those connections. So one of the issues with networking is that when we think about traditional networking, it requires us to be in person. It requires us to be able to walk up to someone, to shake their hand, to play their game, to talk with them at their booth. And online, in-person networking isn't always practical. During COVID, all kind of in-person networking events pretty much stopped. Oftentimes, in-person networking might not be practical if you need to travel large distances. Maybe you don't have a community nearby. Maybe you're an individual who isn't able to travel too often, maybe due to a health condition or something. So we're going to talk about online networking and how we can use the internet to our advantage. And a little bit of a funny story. So I mentioned earlier I had that talk that I gave at GDC where I was talking about in-person networking. As I was working on the talk, I was like, actually, I have the word networking in the title. I don't want anyone to confuse this with a programming networking talk or online multiplayer talk. And so I was thinking on how I was going to fix that. And I was going to say, I added the word etiquette, so networking etiquette. I'm like, you don't really have etiquette when it comes to plugging in cables and things like that. And then I added the rest of the words on the title just to make it a little bit fun. But even still, with networking etiquette, we still got people coming to the talk who were expecting a programming talk. They're like, oh, I came because I thought it was an online multiplayer networking talk, but it was actually a really good cool talk on how to meet people. So I always find that a little funny. All right, so in online networking, so Twitch or streaming on different services is a great place. And going back to those points we talked, so Twitch provides a shared place and it provides a shared interest. The shared place is whatever Twitch streamer's room you're in, or if you're streaming yourself, you're providing a place for other people to join you, to connect with. It also provides a shared interest. Usually streamers have a certain type of thing they like to focus on. Or if you're streaming yourself, game development streams or dev streams as you're working on your game are a great way to provide a catalyst for a shared interest. So people can join your stream and they can ask you about your game, ask you about your process, you can chat about things, and create opportunities to connect there. The next is online communities. So Discord right now is kind of the premier place for online communities today. In the past, there's been forums and email groups, but Discord checks a lot of these boxes where it's a shared place. There's shared interest usually. Usually Discord servers are based around a certain theme, and then there's oftentimes shared people. So this example right here is called the House of Peeps Discord. This was a Discord that was created during GDC one year. GDC is the game development conference that happens in San Francisco every year. And it was just a simple Discord created so a group of artists who are new to GDC could connect with each other and figure out where to go get lunch, figure out what talks to go to. But what it turned into was a community of artists supporting each other. So it became a safe space where artists could join and get mentorship, provide mentorship. They do portfolio reviews. They do meetings where they talk about things and give advice. And it's a great way of networking and connecting with people. And this is, why I wanted to kind of highlight some of these examples is when you say, oh, I'm going to go to a networking event or I'm networking with someone, most people aren't going to think of something like Discord. But networking with people on Discord is just as valid as in person. I mean, nothing compares to meeting someone in person and being able to shake their hand and connect with them. But if you don't have that, something like Discord or Twitch or some of these other options are great ways of connecting with people. The next kind of transition from, having an online community is doing online meetups. So when COVID happened, our meetup group in Cleveland transitioned to online. And we kind of had to figure it out as we go. We hadn't really run any online events. And so it also, offers a shared place, a shared interest, and shared people. We first started out our meetings on Zoom, and those kind of worked for a little bit, but one of the issues with Zoom is that Zoom really only works when one person is talking at a time. And so you'd have, one person talk, and then another person try to reply, and then another person try to talk, and it didn't work out too well. So we eventually switched to a service called Gather.town, which gives you like a little RPG, 2D RPG character, and as you walk around and stand next to someone, you're able to chat with them. So if there's a conversation happening, people can walk over here and have their video chat over there. Somebody can walk up like you would in person and join the conversation, and it's a much more organic way of interacting online. So, like I said, there's a number of challenges with running online events. So one of my friends, Amelia Walker, wrote this really great article on running online events. She talks about things like when you're scheduling an online event, do you have it during one time zone or multiple time zones? Do you have it run for 24 hours so everyone can join? Is it asynchronous? What are the different advantages to using different platforms? And so if you're interested in running online events, I would definitely recommend checking out that article. You can take a picture of the short URL. But whenever you're creating online events, you can create them focused around whatever you like. If you're passionate about 2D stylized art, you can do a once-a-month event for 2D stylized artists. And you'll get people who are interested in that specific niche, and you'll be able to have deep conversations with them. You'll be able to make deep connections because you have that shared interest and that shared knowledge. But yeah, along with Zoom, there's Gather, Discord, and a number of other tools that you can use to connect with people online. So next is one of the most unanticipated networking things that I didn't think about is the book that I co-authored became a really great networking opportunity. So my co-author, Hannah Brady, is a writer. I'm a programmer. We teamed up to write the book. And after we published the book, which took about a year and a half to write, we got it back and then had to do maybe 8 months of editing from there. After we published the book, we got a number of opportunities to speak at universities, to speak at some conferences, to speak to some different studios, and it provided a shared interest on educating artists or educating people with a non-programming background for us to connect with them and network and work together. And so what I recommend, if you're thinking about networking, writing a book, nope, please don't do that. It was a lot of work, and it was well worth it, but if you're looking to get networking opportunities, there's easier ways of accomplishing that than writing a book. So I would recommend going with a blog. The idea for the book actually started out as a blog, but through a networking opportunity, it grew into a book. I was at GDC, the Game Developers Conference, and I was telling my friend, I'd bumped into a number of artists who, were having trouble learning how to program, and so I was interested in creating a blog, a resource, where they could, read through these posts and kind of learn how to program. And my friend kind of, paused and was like, that's a really good idea. You should come talk to this book publisher I know. And I was like, And so he introduced me to the book publisher, and through, a series of steps that turned into a book. And so like I said, I wouldn't necessarily, go straight to writing a book to provide networking opportunities, but if you want to provide, a specialist blog on optimization or on color theory in games, those are all specific niches where if you create a resource that doesn't exist that focuses on a specific niche, you'll attract those people who are also interested in that. There's a number of specialty discords that I'm a part of. There's an automation in games discord that's hyper specific, but everybody in there is really interested on automation in games. So I'll quickly throw out some additional bonus ideas for networking and connecting with people. So teaching/mentoring is a great way of connecting with people. I was actually talking with someone earlier today about them teaching a number of students, and then when it was time for them to start their studio, they had a built-in network of students that they were able to rely on. But teaching is one of the best ways of confirming your own knowledge and really connecting with someone. Promotional games are also a great way of creating opportunities that might not exist, whether it be a promotional game for a holiday, a grocery store chain, or even games about your specific country or culture or city. When you create like a hyper-specific game, something that might be small, maybe it's a little mobile, website game that you play to promote something, people who wouldn't normally play games engage with it. And that can create opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. And then lastly, I have social networks up here. So Twitter used to be an okay place sometimes to connect with other developers, but who knows if Twitter will be around anymore, and the internet seems undecided if the game development community is moving to any other social network. So I don't know if I'd recommend, depending on that, but for now it kind of still exists. And then before we wrap up, I want to give a few bonus tips. These are some things that I think are really good to keep in mind for when you're networking or when you're trying to connect with certain people. So the first one is something that I noticed over time, and I couldn't find a word for it, and I couldn't find anyone else kind of talking about it, so I just kind of made it up, and I call it networking lag. And what that is that, like we spoke about earlier, you figure out what your focus is, what you want to lead with when you're connecting with people. And so when I was starting my studio, hey, I'm Jarryd, I'm a programmer from Cleveland. I have a small porting studio. We focus on porting games to consoles, and then the conversation would go from there. That didn't turn into a contract right away. It didn't turn into a contract, the next month or 6 months. But I think I got my first contract that wasn't porting related around 8 months, and then after a year I was able to get a porting contract. But then an interesting thing happened. Around 2 years after I'd started my company and had started putting the word out that I was porting games, somebody who had talked to 2 years ago was like, hey, are you still doing porting? We have this project that we're looking for a porting studio for. Then a couple months later, someone else I spoke to was like, hey, you're the porting guy, or, let's talk about a potential project. And it was almost like clockwork. All these conversations that I had started coming back, and people were asking about the things that we spoke about. And so the reason I mentioned that is if you're out there, you're networking, you're trying to connect with people, and you're trying to accomplish a goal, don't get discouraged if it doesn't turn into things right away. Because sometimes, just the way that conversations happen, hiring cycles with games and production cycles, they might not turn into opportunities right away. But if you make a solid connection with someone, there's a good chance it will come around. And so sometimes, if you're looking to make a career transition, it might take a little bit for the production cycle of the games or the studios to catch up with where you want to be. So that's what I call networking lag. And the second one kind of ties in with that, sustainability. As you're looking to connect with people, remember, it's not a race, it's your career. And so you don't need to connect with everyone right away. You don't need to try to, sometimes I'll see students at a conference and they'll try to talk to every single person, which is great, but also, eventually you're going to tire yourself out. So take it easy and realize, if you miss someone at one event, there's a likely chance you'll be able to catch them at the next event, and then you have an easy conversation. Hey, I was looking to chat with you. I missed you at the last event. Would you be interested in talking? And then the last point is finding your cohort. And what I mean by this is finding people who are in the same point in their careers and heading in the same direction. So when I was working on my game, Art Club Challenge, I showed it at a number of different expos, and I connected with other developers who were working on their first games, who were also looking to build up their studios kind of from the ground up. And because we were all in the same space, we all encountered the same problems, we all had the same obstacles, and we were able to have each other's backs. We all understood what everyone else in that group was kind of going through, and so that created a bond. And I still, I ended up working at a studio with one of them. I ended up working on a side project with someone else, and so finding people in the same sort of career trajectory as you is a really great way of connecting. So wrapping up, covering some of the things we spoke about. So part of the ingredients to a good networking recipe is a shared place, a physical place, a virtual place, a place in your life, having shared interests to chat and connect around, having shared people that you can connect through or that you can connect with. And remember, when you're networking with people, to give, to be genuine and connect with people. Remember the individuals that you're actually connecting with. Finding your specific thing that you want to focus on, the thing that you want people to remember about you when you talk to them and when they recall you. And then being consistent, whether that's consistent with your thing that you are using when you approach someone, or if you're running events, try to host them consistently, as sustainably as you can. But when you keep all these things in mind, they all kind of come together and will help you in your networking journey. And so I hope that some of the things I was able to share with you will inspire you. I would love to hear if any of you start any events or start connecting with people in different ways. And I would love to answer any questions. And this is the best way to contact me, through either Instagram or Twitter. And thank you so much to the Central Asia Game Show, and thank you all for listening.